dear students. Uh, the topic that we have to discuss today is the poem The Election by Sitakant Mahapatra. So before we move on to this poem, let me tell you something about the poet. He was born on 17 September 1937. You can see the PowerPoint. He was born on 17 September 1937 and he was an eminent poet in Odia and English. He was a bilingual writer. He wrote extensively in Odia and also in English. He was in the Indian Administrative Service IAS since 1961 and retired in 1995. So he was also an administrator, IAS officer, joined the service in 1961 and retired in 1995. After retirement, he served as the chairman of Book Trust of India and various other trusts as well. About his works, he has published over 15 poetry collection, 5 essay collection, a travelogue, and also a number of translations as well. His poetry collection has been published in several Indian languages. Now take a look at his works and awards. His notable works are Sabdar Akash, written in Oriya in 1971. The title, the translation is The Sky of Words. And Samudra, 1977, and Anek Sharat, 1981. As I mentioned, he's a bilingual writer. He wrote both in Odia and English. He was the recipient of many prestigious awards. He was awarded Sahitya Academy Award in Odia for his poetry collection, Sabdara Agasha. Maybe the pronunciation may be a little bit different in the regional language. The translation, the title goes like this, The Sky of Words in 1974. He was awarded the 1974 Sahitya Academy Award in Odia for his poetry collection, Sabdara Akash. That's what I mentioned. I think it's a repetition. Now, he was also awarded the Padma Bhushan in 2002 and Padma Vibhushan in 2011. He was also recipient of Jnanapida and also received Soviet Land Nehru Award, Kabir Samman, and several other prestigious awards. A versatile figure and eminent poet in Indian English literature. His works portrays the real life of people in Orissa, and he writes in a simple in a common man's language. Now let us take a look at the poem that we have to discuss today, The Election. Now let me read out the poem first. Our Jeep, the Election by Sitakant Mahapatra. Our Jeep crawls to your village, seeking strange melodies. From the roaring sun, the common will, from the crisscross geometry of private agonies. Our dark longings don't touch you, nor our trappings of posters, symbols, speeches, handbills, for your grief outlives the empires. The called grandchildren awaken in your heart as you discern muted allegories on our ashen faces. Here the great persuaders are little things and not so hidden. Cheap plastic, cheaper nylon, dark classes to blot out the sun. With one foot in hunger and the other in the soul, you make your decision, the anguish of choice. This is the poem that we have to discuss in detail. Let me give you the general idea about this poem. This poem narrates a recurring episode which takes place at the time of every election. The poem is describing the picture of an election campaign where the campaigners visit a village to pursue the voters to the voters. That's it. Now you find that in short, this poem talks about the rallymen of a certain politician who come to village villagers bearing gifts in exchange of votes. You have to understand that this poem exposes some of the practices that is often takes place in different parts of our country, that is win votes by offering gifts, which is something illegal, but we know that some politician exploiting the conditions of the common people, their poverty, their starvation, and their poor background, they exploit the situations and offer gifts during the time of election and buy their votes. This is the picture that is portrayed in this poem. The morality and the ethical aspect of this movement, fueled by poverty and hunger, are discussed in this poem. We know that this is something illegal, something cannot be accepted, but this is a reality that is taking place in many parts of our country, especially in rural areas where people suffer from hunger and poverty. The politicians who are supposed to be the representatives of the common men, they turn to them only during the time of election just to win the vote. That's all. Now take a look at the poem in detail. Before moving to that, let me tell you something about the poem as well. The poem was originally written in Oriya. Later it was translated into English by the author himself. As I mentioned, he was a bilingual writer. He writes both in Oriya and in English. The poem was originally written in Oriya, and later it was translated into English by the author himself. The speakers or the speaker of the poem is a campaigner who visits the village for winning the votes, for campaigning. Now you can find the picture of poetry, stricken people of Orissa, their starvation, that takes place there. All these things are explained here. They cast vote in exchange of gifts. Now take a look at the first stanza. You can, I'll discuss that first stanza. Let me read out the poem once again. I mean the first stanza. As I mentioned, uh, you can see that first stanza. I'm recording this entire session, so those who haven't joined this live session need not worry. You will get the entire discussion in your. I'll share the audio. I mean, share this class. Now take a look at the first stanza. Our jeep rolls to our village, seeking strange melodies from the roaring sun. The common will from the crisscross geometry of private agonies. So in the first stanza, the campaigners, the first stanza talks about the campaigners who reach the village seeking votes. You find that the jeep crawls to your village. It indicates that the roads in the village is not so good. That's why the jeep can reach very slowly. It is not going so fast or in a comfortable manner. It crawls. That's the word it is used here. It indicates the infrastructural facility, the roads in the village. It's not in a good condition. That's why the jeep crawls to the village seeking strange melodies. Here the strange melodies can be the words that they expect from the people. Okay, from the roaring sun, you can find that it's too hot out there. So the campaign takes place in uh, the climate is too hot. That's why it is said that from the roaring sun. So somehow the campaigners managed to reach the rural areas for their political need. We know that almost all the politicians, they reach out to the people during the time of election. They reach all the nook and cranny of the places, villages, everywhere they'll come. They visit, they'll, show great sense of love and affection because they need our vote. Now, the common will. The common will is the election that is mentioned here. So an election is going to be held soon. That is why they have reached this place for the common will from the crisscross geometry of private agonies. Again, indicating the difficulty that they face to reach the village. It may be talking about the difficulties that they face as campaigners from the crisscross geometry of private agonies. Maybe indicating the roads, again indicating the problems that people face from the crisscross geometry of private agonies. That's how it is mentioned here. Now we find that the speaker in the first stanza, as I mentioned, it's the campaigners who attempts to reach to the village, the remote areas of the village, and the struggle that they face to reach to the people is indicated here. They have to toil. I mean, they have to struggle a lot to reach the people. That also shows the reality in our states, in different parts of the our country. We find that it is still remote. We don't find it easy to go to some of the areas in our country. In a place like Orissa, here the author talks about a rural place where road and other facilities are not safe. However, the campaigners, they reach the spot. Now, our dark longings don't touch you, nor our trappings of posters, symbols, speeches, handbills, for a grief outlives empires. Now, when you find a group of campaigners, when they visit the people, they come with all the materials to campaign. That is, they have posters, they have symbols, speeches, all these things. They have all the materials with them. Our dark longings, here the words are carefully chosen, their longings, their desires, that is dark. you know Outwardly, if you analyze, it may be, from the point of view of the speaker, he's talking about the difficulty that they have to manage all these things, to prepare posters, to prepare symbols, all these things. Our dark longings don't touch you. See, at the same time, it is dark in the sense that their desire, they dream of getting the vote. Apart from that, they don't have any genuine love for the people whom their leader is going to represent. See, as we are aware, as people in a democratic country, we know that when the supporters of any parties, they come during the election campaigns, they come to us with a lot of promises. you know they'll talk about a lot of things, but they are all, we can say, these are all false promises. So he says that the speaker says that our dark longings don't touch you, nor our trappings, again, the things that they brought. This is also a double-edged word here. Trapping, something that we use to actually deceive people. Here they come with a lot of things. They have their posters, symbols, speeches, everything. They have worked a lot to prepare all these things. But that never touch you, because you look at this, for your grief outlives empires. That's what he says, the speaker says. Though they suffered, though they worked hard to make all these things, comparing these with the sufferings of the people in the village, you know, you can never compare. That's what he says. Your grief outlives empires. This is a reality that we know, especially in a rural settings in our country. People go through very, difficult times. They they don't have basic facilities. They don't have food. They don't have proper shelter, clothing. So this condition is indicated in this line. Your grief, your sorrow, your sufferings outlives empires. That means it cannot be explained in words, that kind of sufferings that the people have. That's why even when the campaigners, they say that we have worked a lot to reach to you, I mean to come to you, we have prepared a lot of things, but when we compare your sufferings, our hard works is nothing. That's what they say. Okay, so here in these two stanzas, you find that the campaigners, they are trying to set the stage. They are trying to make the people aware that we agree, we understand your sufferings, your problems, you are suffering a lot. That's why we are coming here. You know, this kind of a campaigning we often see during the time of election. They admit the actual conditions of the villagers or the people only at the time of election. Now, look at the third stanza. The called grandchildren awaken in your heart as you discern muted allegories on our ashen faces. Slowly, you can find the narration tells us about the condition of the people. The called grandchildren awaken your heart, maybe indicating the people who died out of starvation. Called grandchildren, awaken your hearts. When you see these politicians and their supporters, you think about the hunger and starvation that you face. And even people suffer a lot during each and every election. People look at their representatives with hope. That is the basic point you need to remember. We Every election we find that the people come to us, the politicians come to us with their promises, and as the voters we forget all the miseries and we look at them with hopes. Here, the same situation is mentioned. The called grandchildren awaken as you discern muted allegories of on our ashen faces. The words used as ashen faces, muted allegories, are all talking about the what do you call, in other words, whatever happens, and maybe these are all meant for interpretation. I think it talks about the helplessness of the people. That means every time when the politicians come to them, they look at them with great hope. Though they are aware that these people are not going to bring any changes. Okay, the allegories, the stories that they tell are not going to make any changes. They are ashen faces. That is how it is used. The faces that remains the same. Okay, uh, you cannot expect any change in your future. They are aware of the predicament. The villagers are aware of their condition, and still they look at these campaigners with great hope. Now, then again, next stanza here, the great pursuers are little things and not so hidden. Cheap plastic, cheaper nylon, dark glasses to blot out the sun. Now, here comes the crux of our argument, that is how people often win the election. As we already understood, the people are suffering like anything. They go through very difficult situations in their life. So the so-called representatives, so-called the people who participate, I mean, contest in the election, they know how to get the votes. It's not hidden. Look at this. Here, the great pursuers, what are the things that they use to pursue the people? They are little things, not so hidden. No, they distribute freely those things, that cheap plastic, cheaper nylon, dark glasses to blot out the sun. That means, all these things which are very cheap, but Since, as we mentioned, the condition is so difficult, so pathetic, the villagers have no other option but to accept them. So during the campaigning, these people, these candidates and their supporters, they bring all these materials that they need. And that's how they win the election. You understand? This is a what do you call naked reality in our country. In some parts of our states, people buy votes by giving all these things. I don't want to mention any names or any name of the political party or the leaders, but we have, as an enlightened audience, you are aware that this is a reality that happens in our country. In different parts of our state, our country, people, I mean, the candidates, they get they ensure that they'll win the election by with all forms of malpractices. They bribe the people. They give them what they require. This is against the law, but still this is happening. That's what he's trying to expose. As an administrator and as a poet, he has this, what do you call this, concern that he has towards the societies highlighted here. How the politicians who have no concern over the real issues of the people, they reach out to the people only during the time of election with cheap materials and try to buy their votes. Look at this last stanza. With one foot in hunger and the other in the soul, you make your decision, the anguish of choice. So this sums up the pathetic situation of the voters. They have no other option but to accept these things because these are the gifts that they get at least during the time of campaigning. So they have no other option to accept all these things. Those who offer this, they'll give. They vote for those people. So look at this. Look in an assertive tone, the speaker says, with one foot in hunger and the other in the soul, you make your decision. The anguish of choice, the sad, the distressed choice. That is whether to accept this or not, whether to vote for our candidate or not. Naturally, they'll accept these things and they'll vote for those candidates who offer these things. This is the condition that we have in certain parts of our country, and that's how the elections are won by candidates. So here in this poem, when you analyze, you find that the condition of the people, how the I mean in the during the election, how people are bought by the powerful candidates. So in a nutshell, it exposes the actual condition of our villages and also the failure of our democracy as well. You know, we often say that India is one of the greatest democracies in the world, but still in different parts of our state, we know how people manage to win election. So this is a problem, and also I think during our discussion, I'll try to explain a bit more if you ask me questions and if we go for further discussions, we will be able to understand this in a bit more clear. So I hope I have tried to convey the sense of this poem. Thank you very much. Now